This is Monday, October 18th, 2021. We are now in a special meeting, a work board session. I will ask Mr. Shaw to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay,
Madam President,
Wish we get some heat in here.
I do too.
just a quick question. When we came out of executive session, who made the motion to come out of executive session?
Mrs.
did.
Vaughn,
Thank you. And who seconded it?
Parsons.
Thank you. That's all I needed.
Oh, no, Mr. Shaw. It was a part,
Yeah, you did.
you did.
I made it to start this one.
Okay, Shaw, there we go. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
President Neely,
Thank you, sir.
or Dr. Sachs.
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
Mrs. Smalley on with us on Teams?
I'll have to check with Mr. Flowers.
Oh, hi, Mrs. Smalley.
Two.
Okay,
Because we,
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. We do have Ms. Smalley
So that we,
online.
I want to make sure we had her.
okay, are we ready?
Yes, ma'am. And now that we're in session, I know that in looking at the agenda that we wanted to reorder a few things if that would be possible, because we have some other staffing needs this evening. So I was going to ask for Ms. Hornbuckle and Mr. Hardesty to go first. And I don't have their topic in front of me.
It's a certified list.
The certified list for staffing, so thank you. So, Madam President, if you'd entertain that change for them to go first, I'd
fine.
appreciate it.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Mr. You
So,
got it for me,
so
sir?
you want to go ahead with your, yeah. Is it,
It's in the yellow folder. Sorry.
it's in here?
The yellow.
Oh, the yellow.
There you
I
go.
moved this microphone down and it's
Okay.
amazing.
Okay, I got you.
What?
I got you. Go ahead.
Okay. Madam President, Dr. Superintendent Sachs, board members, we are here this evening to talk about the certified list. And the first question is, oh. No. What is the certified list? The certified list, thank you, deals with classifications for service and professional personnel. It defines each position within service and professional personnel. It defines the pay scale for service and professional personnel. And our reimbursement from the state for service and professional personnel is based on the certified list. In your yellow folder, on the right-hand side, you have the positions as they're listed for service and professional under each number. And that's one of the things they look at. Do you all see that? Okay.
This is what she's referencing here.
Exhibit 1?
Yes. Exhibit 1 is service, Exhibit 2 is professional.
Okay.
And so the certified list, of course, is covered under the code. Okay. The first code is West Virginia Code 18A11, and that code looks at the list you all have, which has the different definitions for the different professions. That's also listed later in the PowerPoint. The second code looks at 18A9A2, and that goes over other various definitions concerning the certified list. And the last code is West Virginia Code Section 189A12, and that's the County Basic Foundation and the total basic state aid allowance for the certified list. And I'm glad Mr. Rockin came. So under 18A1A, you all can read all this, but it goes over what school personnel means, what professional personnel means, service, classroom teachers, principals, supervisors, central office administrators, other professional employees, service persons, or service personnel. It says the certified list is completed every year. It's based on the current positions that we have in the county. So every position we have for service and professional, it's based on those. Cabell County, in fact, just submitted their certified list the first week of October.
For both service and professional?
Yes, Mrs.
Okay.
Blunt. So we're going to go over the process of how the certified list is done. You examine every single position, so all service, all professional personnel in the Cabell County Board of Education. You look at their certifications. you look at their position codes. And again, those two lists have the codes on there, but professional starts with the superintendent and under Exhibit 2. You look at the salary schedules, and each of those are scrutinized and reviewed before they are submitted to the state. Under professional personnel, Paula Motsbury looks at it. It then goes to Debbie Smith, on to Mr. Hardesty and Mr. Rockin. Under service, Shelley Adams looks at it initially, and then David Tackett, and then it goes on to Mr. Hardesty and Mr. Rockin before they submit it to the state. And reimbursement funds from the state are impacted by this list and who we tell them we currently have in positions in the county at that time when we turn it in.
Okay.
You want to say something? Yeah, sure.
One thing, just to clarify, just to draw your attention a little bit more to it, she provided you with two handouts that were on the right side of the folder. One's Exhibit 1, one's Exhibit 2. And I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of how that Exhibit 1 works. All of those are actually identified positions in state code that talks about what the service personnel position is. And right beside that, you will see a letter. That letter corresponds to the pay scale, which is also identified in state code. Now, we have a salary booklet that you all adopt each year. So we have a bump in whatever the state minimum salary is for that classification. So ours is what you all approve each year. For example, an aid 3 says it's C pay. That C is translated to the salary schedule to identify the daily rate for that individual. The reason is that all of those are identified is because if you read through there, we have aid 1, aid 2, aid 3, and aid 4. So just because an individual is an aid in our system, and I'm using that because those are the first 4 listed there because it's alphabetized. But the reason we have to scrutinize every single position is because we need to make sure, one, that we're reviewing the individual's pay to make sure it's accurate, and identify the job description to make sure that person falls in line with the right identified salary schedule for them. So we have to go through every position in the county. We have almost 1,800 full-time employees. So we have to go through each single one of those. We have to identify their position, their pay code, their days of employment, and their contract, and make sure all of that's correct before we submit it. And they still look through it and they ask questions or clarifying questions because sometimes it doesn't look right. And to give you an example, in service personnel, this might be way in the weeds, though we don't want to go, but for example, if a service personnel has an associate's degree, they get a bump in pay. They also get a bump in pay for plus hours in college credit. Well, the state assumes that if you have an associate's degree, you have 60 plus hours to get an associate's degree. But there are some associate's degree you only need 50 or 52 hours for. And so there's a code for each one of those. So they could have an associate's degree with 52 hours. It's coded 04 on it, but the state says, well, that should be an 05 because you should have 60. So we have to go through each individual employee and just to verify all of that. So
That's a
it's a
lot.
time-consuming process, but I just wanted to kind of clarify what all that means on what you've got there.
May I ask you one question?
Certainly.
Is there another category where we would go to and see A3C actually pays X amount of dollars?
Yes, that's on the salary schedule that is approved by the board each year. I think we did that in May last year. And so every category is listed. So there's an A salary schedule, a B, and Cabell County even drops that just a little bit more. When you look down through there, you'll see secretary. So there's an E, an F, and a G.
Mm-hmm.
We look at G and we decide that we have a G1, a G2, and a G3 pay based on what your position is. The state doesn't see that G1, G2, and G3. That's something that Cabell County does.
Okay.
If someone's an H pay in service, then the state says what their minimum H salary should be. Cabell County has an H51, an H55, and an H57 based on the identified position, and so that's what their pay would be.
My lands.
And so, but in that scenario you were talking about, someone who is at a G scale, a G3 would make more on the salary schedule than a G1,
Correct.
and H would make more than a G3.
No.
Oh, I'm
Depending
sorry.
on what the salary is.
Thank you.
An H51 may make less than a G3 because of the salary table that's presented each year.
Yeah, but it could make more than a G1,
Correct.
right?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a lot.
Finish the presentation? Well, I think he about finished it for me. We went over the process again. We look at the certifications, the position codes, as he pointed out on the exhibit. You all have 1 and 2, and then how those correlate to the salary schedules. And again, they're scrutinized by professional personnel office, service personnel office, and then Mr. Rockin and Mr. Hardesty. Are there any other questions? Yes,
I
Mrs.
have
Bond?
one. I just want clarification on this. Exhibit 2,
Yes.
the second page, what is a principal combined? What does that mean?
We don't have those.
We do not
That
have
was a
that
question I
in-
had. Yes, we do
Okay.
not have principal
Is
combined.
that maybe why I don't know what that is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I didn't either. You're in good company.
Okay, okay. That's what I didn't know, so thank you much.
What-
Any other questions?
Yeah, go ahead. Well, define that.
Ms.
Oh, do you
Bond?
know what it is?
Well, it's not easy to tell you what it is. What is easy is to tell you what it's not.
Okay, I'll try
An
that.
elementary principal is defined as well as a middle school and a high school and a multi-county vocational school principal.
Okay.
If it's not one of those, it's that. If you notice in the definition, it says a principal that cannot be defined as
Yeah,
that, so it's easier to tell you what it's not. Pardon me.
I still don't understand
Yes,
that.
okay, so if
It's
we,
going over my head.
so if we had a preschool through 8th grade school,
Okay, okay.
that would be combined because we'd have a principal over that.
Oh, okay, that helped.
I probably should have labeled that.
That's okay. We got there, that's all that matters. Okay. This is a
Any
lot of
other
work.
questions?
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you all.
That
And
concludes.
Ms. Hornbuckle, can
Yes,
you?
Dr. Sachs?
Can you provide the board with a teaser of sorts as to what you will be covering at the next workshop?
Dr. Sachs?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
I don't remember.
Okay,
After
well-
the afternoon I've had, I apologize. It's personnel season.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Hardesty. Yes.
It will be exciting. Thank you.
Yes. So, just to whet the appetite.
Okay. Okay, now, we'll go to item 2, Medicare funding, Drew.
Thank you, Madam President. Jed's got a chart I'm going to have him throw up on the screen. So can you hide that ribbon? Thank you, Jed. Okay. My presentation is also going to be pretty brief, just like Sharon's. And this is kind of the beginning of a series of work session presentations that I'm hoping to deliver to the board over the next few months. It's basically where our money comes from. So how we get our money, what the makeup of it is, you know, just some high-level stuff, but just so that way you're maybe a little better informed about where
Right
our
underneath it.
funding comes
That's the one you
through.
want. No, she needs it like this, Medicare. It's in the blue folder.
Let me look through all of it.
Here we go. I'll tell you what. Here you go. I'll give you mine.
It might be in here and I'm not seeing it, but I don't see it. Okay. No, that's okay.
Is this, are you covering traditionally, or are you also including like the extra funds that we have received because of COVID relief? Or is this just in general?
Today, okay, so over the series, over the next few months, what I'm hoping to cover is traditionally, this is where our money comes from. It's going to be like non-COVID relief money.
Okay.
So that way, the end of the road, when the COVID money is all gone, you will at least know where, a little bit more about what you will have at the end when the COVID money's gone.
Very good.
Okay, so I've got 3 charts I'm going to show up here on the screen, and it looks like you also have it in your handout if you'd prefer to look at them. And the first one that I have, this says Medicaid revenue last 5 years. Does everybody see that one? You see that one, Mrs. Neely? The one that says Medicaid revenue last 5 years?
It's on the front.
Yeah, I think it's probably the first one.
You got it. You got it, Mayor. This one,
Yeah, it's probably that first one in your packet. Okay, so this is how much money that we have received the last 5 years from our Medicaid funding stream. And so you go back to school year 16, 17, that was actually the year before I got here. And that was just a little less than $1 million. And look in 18, that was my first year. We got just a tad bit less than that, so somewhere in the neighborhood of about 900,000. 19 was a little bit better, so we were about 1.2. FY20, we were just a smidge, just barely under $1 million. And then this past school year, you see it right on that line of 1.2 million is what we brought in. And the orange line tells you over the last 5 years, what was our average per year? A little more than $1 million is what we could probably budget for each year for Medicaid. Yeah, that's kind of, we have a little bit of a trend going where we can estimate or expect to collect close to $1 million a year from Medicaid reimbursements. Okay, that makes sense? All right. The second page, so I'll let Jed. Yep, Jed's good, very good. This is our Medicaid revenue since the 2008-2009 school year. And you can see there was a very high amount of money at one point. Then there was a very low dip in FY16. That's the 15-16 school year. And then we've kind of been on the rise, and like I showed you on the first chart, it's really kind of stabilized over the last 5 years, which is good. But what I kind of wanted to show you is that if you go back a decade ago, we were collecting over twice what we're collecting now.
Yeah.
So this was a much, much larger funding stream at that time. And that's very characteristic of all the West Virginia school boards. There were some changes right around FY14. That's where you started to see that dip. That changed how Medicaid funding was calculated, and it added a tremendous amount of work to teachers in the schools, aides in the schools, and also staff at the central office of every county. And they lowered the amount of eligible funding. And so that's why you see, if you look at 13, where it was 2.4 almost, just eyeballing that, and you can see there was a huge decline over the next 3 years. And that's directly attributable, and I promise you, if I threw up the chart for any county in West Virginia, it would look almost identical to this. But thankfully, we've gotten to a point where we're a lot more stable now. There was a point where we were very concerned we may lose our Medicaid funding entirely. And you can think, and this is something I suspect Mr. Lucas, those of you that have been on the board for a while, he probably brought this up a number of years ago. There was a concern that we may lose it entirely. And when you see that in the past, we were used to getting well over $2 million, there was concern we could lose $2 million a year in the budget. But thankfully, things have stabilized, and we're at a point now where we feel pretty comfortable that where we are, we think it's going to continue to stay pretty consistent. So the third sheet that I wanted to share with everybody just kind of reiterates that second page. This is the old Medicaid money, and the biggest kind of takeaway is that orange line. I just wanted to show you what the average really was. It was not quite 2.2 million, but probably about 2,150,000 is what we were getting every year at that time. And so the amount of money that we get now, while it is stable, it's obviously quite a bit less than it once was.
Drew, can I ask a clarifying question? What was the difference in FY, this sheet compared to the last one you had for those years?
This one, the middle sheet, Jed, can you go back one for me, please? Okay. This one is over a whole 10-year period, and
Right.
basically page 3 is just the first few years, the good years, if you will, the years with the really high numbers. It was basically to just kind of drive home the fact that the average at that time was well over $2 million, and now our average is down to about $1 million. We do have several ways that we're able to receive reimbursement for Medicaid eligible services. And I think in your packet, you may have a copy of a page that says, it's got 5 numbers listed down the side. The first one says targeted case management. Are you all able to see that? And Jed, I think that was a Word document, if you want to try to throw that up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not in that PDF. It was the other file I gave you. Did you
I
see it?
see
Okay.
Targeted case management, personal care, random.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm with
Okay,
you.
so Mrs. Bond has that. This is just kind of a synopsis. This is something actually Mrs. Scarberry prepared for you all. Just a little bit of an explanation on where our funding comes from, specifically the types of services we're able to bill for through the special ed department. Targeted case management, you see that more like teachers that are providing services to students. Personal care, a lot of times that's our one-on-one aides. She has on here the random moment time study. That was one of the really big increases in the workload during that time when you saw that big drop off. That was one of the things that came about. Basically, our staff get a pop quiz asking what it is that they're doing. And
Okay.
if it's Medicaid eligible, then we'll get credit for it. And if it's not, then we don't. Our transportation department bills for Medicaid services if the student's IEP requires transportation and they're Medicaid eligible. And then she also has speech services are also eligible, so we're able to bill for those things. But Mrs. Scarberry and her team do a really fantastic job bringing in numbers. In fact, I think she shared with us just recently that we are well above the required amount of responses. They do an excellent job following up with our staff to make sure that they're completing these required random moment time study questions. So they're doing everything they can to make sure we're in compliance, and we're only requesting reimbursement for legitimate causes. But they really have done a tremendous job making sure that our funding has become stable and that it's also allowable and complies with all requirements.
Okay.
Do you all have any questions for me?
Will you just tell me if I'm understanding correctly? The reason we are seeing this drop is solely based on that the calculations were changed that lowered the amount of what was eligible for funding. Am I understanding?
What was eligible, but also just there were some additional hoops, so to speak, that
Okay, I understand that.
they changed. It gets into a lot of math. The calculations to be able to determine how much you get are outstanding. You're talking about percentages of
Yeah.
percentages of percentages.
Okay.
And they added a few percentages we had to multiply by across the state. Like I said, it wasn't just Cabell County, that was all counties.
All county, statewide.
And it wasn't necessarily, this was more federal regulation.
Yes.
It was not anything that
Yeah.
Cabell County
Right.
could have done differently,
That's
or
what I
really
was
the
wanting.
state could have done anything differently. And that's why, as Mr. Rockton was saying, those graphs where you saw the dips are nearly identical for every county. They were
Okay.
experiencing the exact same things at the same time.
It's just such a significant loss.
It absolutely is.
That's, I guess, what is heartbreaking, but.
Yeah.
But the good thing is it's balancing out a little bit more.
Yes.
So it's not it's not like the edge keeps falling, as it
that-
relates to that revenue source.
Yeah, I wanted to give you all some historical perspective that, it hasn't been $1 million forever. There's always that chance that, the regulations could change
Could change.
again, but right now we think we're at a place where things are fairly stable. And if you look over the last 5 years, it's kind of proven that that's the case, that the special ed department's doing a real fine job making sure that, we're receiving a stable amount of funding, and they're keeping up on all the required reports that they're supposed to turn in.
Good, excellent.
Any other questions from me this evening? I just want to thank you all for giving me the time to present. Like I said, this is the first of several. We're going to have some more over the next few months, some other things about where does our money come from. So, thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rotgan. Okay, at this time, Madam President, we have one more, which is on positive behavior instructional supports, and Mr. Boggs, thank you, is, I forgot your name, sir, apologize. Mr. Boggs is going to lead this.
I do that all the time. That's why.
Well, I turned 40 and it just all goes downhill, it seems like.
It does not.
I had to go get
you,
cortisone
Dr.
shots in my
Sachs.
heel the other day. Forget
That was 41, wasn't it, sir?
That's right, that's right.
Madam Board President, board members, and Dr. Sachs. Just here to speak with you all regarding positive behavior intervention supports in the middle school. So I've got a couple guests. I've got two of my administrators here. I've got Mr. Mann from Milton Middle School, and then I've got Miss Smith from Barbersville Middle School, and they're going to talk a little bit about what they've done with PBIS, and then also we've got Alicia Zeman from Marshall University with the West Virginia Behavioral and Mental Health Technical Assistance Center in Marshall University, and she is actually joining us virtually, and she's going to speak a little bit about this here in a few minutes. So if you don't care to go to the next slide, oh, I got it quicker here, Jed. So the question that I have for you is what is PBIS? And again, and that is positive behavior intervention supports. And I always want to give everybody the why behind that. But to get a firm understanding of this, there is a short video I want to show. And Jed, if you don't care to go ahead and show that video for us, and then I think this will give a good explanation to this. And this is just a couple minutes. Jed, you go ahead and shut that off. Okay, so I think just from that short video, it's just a couple minutes, and it's really talking about positive behavior intervention supports and what that is. I think one of the big takeaways from that is if we don't know, if a student doesn't know how to read or doesn't know how to write, we teach them. And that's what it really boils down to with behavior. Sometimes with kids, especially dealing with a pandemic year, everything that's going on, we have to teach and retrain students on their behavior. That doesn't mean yelling at them, screaming at them. PBIS is really about it's not a program, it's a framework. It's a framework that is going to look a little bit different in Milton Middle compared to Barbersville Middle or Huntington High School or Cabell Midland or even elementary school. It's specific to that school, and it's really, you know, about your consistent expectations, like how you walk in the school, how you leave the cafeteria, all of that, and how you speak with students. Because the last thing we want to do as educators is create or kind of up the anxiety level in the school, and it's just talking about how you speak with those students. So the why behind this is it reduces the suspension, decreases behavior referrals. It is proven. It is evidence-based practice that we really need to use in our schools. In middle school, if you know anything about middle school, it is behaviors are typically start to rise in that middle school year in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and then they kind of start to go on down about 9th, 10th grade, and then it kind of levels out a little bit. So this is definitely something that we need to do and that we are doing here in Cabell County. So Jed, if you care to go to the next slide. Or, sorry, I forgot I had the clicker here. So a PBIS is a model. You know, it's how we make our decisions. It is different in each individual school, and it is, you know, how we support these students and the different systems that we have in place when we're dealing with these students. And we do know that it does work. Again, it's evidence-based. We can see this from looking at our discipline referrals in WVEIS, and every school is familiar with the multi-tiered system of support. And when I'm talking about that, you know, when we do our iReady presentations, you always see the red, yellow, and green. Mm-hmm. That means basically the same thing when it comes to behavior. There are students, the green students are kids that do just about everything that you ask them to do every single day. There's no issues with them. They're very compliant. Then there's kids that are just a little bit at risk. Maybe they need a little additional support. And then you have your students that are in that red area. So, you know, discipline and academics go hand in hand sometimes. You can't do one without the other. You've got to have some structures in place to make it successful. And again, these are the three-tiered model here that we've got, and that we were talking about, just like you would see in iReady or something. Tier 1, again, that's just about everybody. That's going to run about 80 to 85% of the kids are going to have exactly, they're going to do all of that. And again, the yellow is your moderately at risk, and then the red is going to be your more at-risk students in the district or within that school. And that's going to run about, you know, 2 to 3% in just about every school with this. So right now, what we've done is back in 2019, we started working with the Marshall University Technical Assistance Center Autism Training Center to talk about and implement PBIS within the schools. So that was Crossroads, Huntington East Middle, Huntington Middle, and Milton Middle were all trained in PBIS, and they took a group of staff members, administrators, counselor, and they went to 3 or 4 different sessions. And what they did is they learned about PBIS and went back and how to look at their data and their discipline data and how to implement action steps to reduce the behaviors. And we've got 2 really good examples. And the reason I brought Milton Middle and Barbersville Middle here, Milton Middle has been implementing this for about 3 years now, and it's been very, very successful. Barbersville Middle, this is actually the first year that you all started implementing it, so they're on the tail end of things and kind of maintaining it. Milton Middle. Barbersville is just starting this journey right now with Marshall University Technical Assistance Center. Any questions so far?
Any questions?
Okay, so I'm actually going to turn this over to Alicia, if she can talk about the next couple slides here.
I sure can. Thank you guys so much for having me this evening and allowing me to attend virtually. I work for the Autism Training Center at Marshall, but I'm actually located in Nutter Fort in Harrison County. So I'm a few hours away, and we're actually still a travel band. So I appreciate you making the accommodations for me to join you this way. I'm here representing the West Virginia Behavior Mental Health Technical Assistance Center, and the TA Center is actually a collaboration between the West Virginia Autism Training Center at Marshall University and the West Virginia Department of Education's Office of Special Education. We're the hub of 3 major projects in the state, including early childhood positive behavioral supports, or interventions and supports, which is headed up by Dr. Amy Carlson, the school-wide project, which I head up, and mental health first aid, which is headed up by Diana Bailey Miller. And we're excited to share with you today a little bit about our workflow and the work we've been doing in Cabell County. I think you should be seeing a slide that has 4 different visuals. So it has Readiness, Academy, Technical Assistance, and Common Roadblocks. And really, essentially, that is the workflow that we work through when we're working with schools who are interested and begin implementing positive behavioral interventions and supports. So you'll see that we have Readiness, and Readiness is something that we've added in the past few years. And Readiness is really about having that conversation with schools about their commitment, their buy-in, their understanding of positive behavioral interventions and supports. This allows us to have a chance to talk about what their data is telling them, what is happening in their building, looking at their current practices and evaluations, looking at how many initiatives they have in their building and how we can align them together underneath the PBIS framework. And then that often leads to the Academy. The Academy is 3 separate days of training, 1 day in September, 1 day in October, 1 day in November. And the schools come to us to learn about the essential features about positive behavioral interventions and supports. So we focus on, do you have a team? Do you have the right team? When are you going to meet? How are you going to share what you meet with your staff? We talk about building those expectations that Mr. Boggs talked about. What expectations do you want your students to understand, that when they come in, walk into your building, these are the expectations we have, and this is what it means. So if you choose be respectful, be safe, be responsible, what's it mean to be safe, respectful, responsible in the hallway? What's it mean to be those 3 things in the cafeteria and in the bathroom? And so we're making very sure and very clear, because in the words of Brene Brown, we believe that clear is kind. So we're being very kind about what those expectations are and teaching them very explicitly to our students, so there's no questions about what needs to be happening in our buildings. We also talk about how we acknowledge behavior, because we know if we acknowledge behavior that we want to see, we're more likely to see it again. But we also know on the other side of that, we have to have a really clearly defined system of how we're going to respond to challenging behaviors. We talk about data systems and whether we're using the data that we're collecting to make data-based decision-making or to guide our decisions in our building. We talk about social emotional learning, how we engage our families, and then how we are doing the fidelity of the process that we're teaching. So they come to the Academy, and over those 3 days, they learn about all of those essential features. And then they go back, and essentially what we've given them is the pieces to the puzzle, right? We're saying this is how you put together a framework. We give them activities to do with their team, with their staff, and they go back and they build it. And it's very individualized to their own climate and culture. And after they build it and after they have communicated with their staff, they begin to implement the framework within their buildings. Typically, it takes 3 to 5 years to get to fidelity. And when I say fidelity, I'm meaning they're doing the work as it's meant to be done within their building. Some schools can do it faster than that, but that's typically the average, is about 3 to 5 years to get to fidelity for Tier 1. And then after that, the great thing about the TA Center is that we actually have 4 regional behavior support specialists that can continue to provide technical assistance to the schools. So that's things like professional development, helping with buy-in. It's meeting with the teams to helping them overcome hurdles that they've established or that they've recognized as issues. Because inevitably a school will run into hurdles, because anything in education takes some time to implement and get into place. And that technical assistance helps them, allows us to help them get into really an area of maintenance when it comes to their framework. You can also see we've identified some common roadblocks, but our regional behavior support specialist really can help with mindset shifts, can help with discipline systems and acknowledgments, and really helping with any misconceptions that they might be having about PBIS. And so your regional behavior support specialist in Cabell County is Terrell Jones. She's actually on annual leave today, so I'm filling in for her. But What this slide is really showing you is our workflow, but it's also going to show you some of the work we've done with Barboursville Middle. Now, Readiness is not a requirement, and we've done a little bit of relationship building with Readiness with Barboursville Middle, but we've also so excited that they've attended our first day of our academy, and they'll be attending our second day of our academy, which will be happening this Friday. So we expect to be able to follow this, and of course, if we need to go back to any of those Readiness kind of hallmarks, we can do that as well. If we'll go to the next slide, we'll show you that with Milton Middle, and honestly the rest of the middle schools as well, when they first attended the academy with us, we didn't have the Readiness framework. That's actually something that we've added in the last couple of years. So they came straight to the academy and went through that training, learned about those essential features. They went to build it for each of their schools and began that implementation process. But what we've realized across the state really is that the pandemic, as it has with everything, has really kind of been a barrier to implementation of PBIS. So Mr. Boggs was looking out for that. This summer, he reached out to us and asked if we would come do a booster session with the middle schools. And so Terrell and the AWARE behavior support specialist, because Milton Middle is also an AWARE school as well, came to Cabell and did a booster session where it was just, hey, remember, these are the essential features. To have this in place, you should look for these markers, or you should look for these things that you have in place to make sure that we have a healthy and robust framework that's going to be able to take care of your students and your staff. And so we're really excited about the continued work and the continued relationship we have. Not only are we continuing to do that technical assistance and maintenance work, we're also doing some database decision making with Huntington East as we're teaching their PBIS team how to work through gathering your data, looking at your data, and making decisions about how we change environments and behaviors based off your data. We're so excited that Milton Middle is also one of our AWARE schools, and we're helping to build that as well. And we're just excited that we can have this continued relationship and really get those outcomes that we know, because we know that PBIS, the research tells us, and we've seen it throughout schools throughout the state, that the more partnership we have, the more technical assistance that we can provide, the more advantageous outcomes you'll see in your schools when it comes to behavior, but not only behavior, but also in relationships and in academic outcomes as well. So thank you so much. I know that Mr. Boggs has some examples from Barboursville and Milton Middle, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. That's a quick overview of a very long process. So let me know if you need anything else.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to, again, just kind of reiterate this. Positive behavior intervention supports is not about everybody gets a prize. It's not about, always taking a trip if you do, your expectations. It's just about making clear expectations for all the students and staff within the school. And I will tell you the one thing, and it's one of the common roadblocks on here, is it does not work if the administration is not on board. But I will tell you, the two administrators that I've got right here, they are on board with this. So I'm going to have Mr. Mann come up and speak just very, very briefly, and we're just about finished with this, but you need to really hear from the schools and what they're doing. So Mr. Mann, what is it that you all say every single morning at Milton Middle School about your expectations?
Sure.
I'm going to let you go ahead and explain that.
Yeah, we start off obviously with Pledge Allegiance, and then we have our Panther Pledge. I'm a Panther. I'll be respectful. I'll be responsible for my actions. I'll be motivated to always do my best. And our team, those were the three character traits that they wanted to instill: respect, responsibility, and motivation in our students. And so the first step in that process of PBIS is to come up with those things that you're going to focus on. And we did that. It is everywhere in our building. If you walk down the halls, you will see window coverings: respect, responsible, motivated. You'll see it everywhere. We talk about it all the time. And it's a great program, but if you don't instill it in the people, then it's not going to go well. And that was the major hurdle for us, was to help all of our staff understand that these are the three things that we're going to talk about with kids. And when you have a discussion with a kid, whether it's over discipline, running in the hall, little things like that, we're going to talk about those three things. We're going to say, okay, when they come in the office for discipline, we set them down, we talk about the issue. Which one of those things were we lacking there? Was it motivation, respect, or responsibility? And we talk about that with the student. And we talk about not just, yes, you made that mistake, but now we're moving past that. And so what do we need to do to make sure that doesn't happen again? We need to talk about one of those three things, and how if we were being one of those three things, those three character traits that we have, then we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in. and that really in life, it's not the mistakes we make, but it's what we do afterwards that determines who we are. And we have that conversation and how if we are those three things that we're going to be successful next time. And that's really what PBIS comes. We have all the bells and whistles. We have an arcade for kids. We pass out tickets to kids for respectful, responsible motivation. They get to go to the arcade during lunch if they have those tickets. But really, when it comes down to it, it's those conversations that you have with kids and that the teachers are having, that the counselors are having, that the administration is having with those students that really makes that difference. And it works really well. It's been very successful. You can walk into our hallway and ask any student, hey, what are the three things that they work on here? And they'll tell you those three things every time. So, that's how it works at Milton Middle School. And we're going to continue to support that and continue to do that. And it's a program that we do enjoy there. So, you have any questions or anything? See me after and how?
No. I think it's wonderful. I'm almost laughing inside because I didn't realize I was doing this at home, but I'm doing this in my home, and I can testify that it does work. You constantly, instead of looking for bad behavior, you are looking for positive behavior. The kid that is being very respectful, that they're walking or they've tidied something up, and it's like, I see your really good behavior. That's great. And then how did you come up with your reward system, and how do you negotiate that so that it's kind of equal based on what you've seen the student do?
Sure. So our reward system is very simple. Each teacher in the building gets 6 tickets a week. They get 2 for respect, 2 for responsibility, and 2 for motivation in their mailbox. And when they see that behavior in any student, then they write that student's name on, they write their name, they hand it to the student, and then when lunch comes, that student takes a ticket, they get to the front of the lunch line, and they can take their lunch upstairs to the Panther, what we call the Panther Den, which is, we have pool table, arcade, all kinds of fun stuff up there, and they get to spend their lunch up there playing the games instead of in the cafeteria. But again, like intrinsic motivation of getting that ticket is what kids enjoy, I think, as much as actually getting to go. And that can be any student. So, it can be the straight A, never have disciplined kid that picks a pencil up off the floor. But it also can be a kid who just came back from suspension that, did something in the hallway that was respectful to another student. And you can look for that behavior. And we talk to staff about that. You got to make sure that you're looking for that across the board for those kids.
Yes, because everyone is eligible.
Yeah, everyone, every day in that moment is eligible to get one. Yeah, it's not a long-term deal. We have long-term stuff built in as well, and PBIS has that as well. We'll have our rewards assemblies and those kinds of things. But those tickets week in and week out are something that they can give right there and then to a kid, for any of those 3 things. So
that's
great.
How
that works.
That is great.
Yep. No problem. Thank you.
We call ours mama money and daddy dollars. Now, it's not a money value. It could be time or a special treat, but that's awesome.
I will tell you, the one thing that I really enjoyed about teaching middle school was it's fun. And it's really good to see middle school fun. It should be, because there's a lot of things going on in these kids. They're developmentally, and it really should be fun. I mean, a good example of this, like Mr. Cunningham, he runs down the hallway all the time upstairs. He just always is going up and down the hallway and stuff. If we want to correct that, we've got to actually show him. He's not paying attention whatsoever.
You might have to coach him off of his phone.
I know. Yeah.
He's
So when
probably
Mr. Cunningham goes running down the hallway, I have to go tell him, Mr. Cunningham, you've really got to walk down the hallway. And we show him how to do that, and then it gets better every single time. He's got a long ways to go, but he's trying. All right, so Barbersville Middle is actually in a little different place. They're at the beginning of this, but Ms. Smith has done an excellent job of really starting this journey with PBIS, and I'm going to let her talk a little bit about what they're doing at Barbersville Middle and some of I want you to actually talk about your family event that's going on this Saturday as well.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to talk to you guys tonight because I'm excited about what's going on at our school. We're a little bit unique because we're just getting started, but luckily, including myself and some other teachers, we've had experience at other buildings that have had PBIS in the past. For my school, what we had to do really first is we needed a whole culture shift as far as our environment. And that had to start out not just with our students, but also with our staff. So we've kind of incorporated a lot of the things that we're doing so far with our staff, and I'll talk to you about that in just a little bit. But our focus is all about building relationships. And so, like Mr. Mann said before, we also have a motto that we say every single morning after we do our pledge and everything. And our motto this year is show your pirate pride. And so we took the word, I sound really hickey, pride. Let me see, that's show your pride. So anyway, we took the word pride, and that's how we made our expectations. And so our expectations are positivity, respect, integrity, dependability, and effort. And we actually had a lot of time on our professional development Friday to work on this, and we did work on it before. And so we use all of those on our expectations of how to behave in the hall, bathroom, and all that. And so these expectations are not just for the students, but they're also for everyone who enters our building, including our teachers. And so we do try to model all that and create a really positive environment. We make a real effort to always be in the hallways and build relationships with the kids, to meet them at the door. Like he said, to really talk to the students. We have great counselors, and I have 2 really great assistant principals who we really do try to talk to the students, not just hand out discipline. And our discipline, it is really, traditionally it's pretty low, but we do want to improve on that as well. Some of the things that we are doing is we also are doing the tickets. We have 5 things, our teachers and our staff. We also use our custodians, our secretary. Everybody in our building gets those 5 tickets. They can hand them out to anyone that they want. Ours say pride, and what they do is they just circle which of the characteristics the students displaying when they give them those tickets. And then they can use them. We're just now getting started on this, so we're creating a school store that they'll be able to use them for. And then they'll also be able to use them for school activities and events that they can trade them in for. We have intramurals during the day, but we don't have an area for an arcade or anything like that, which would be fun, but maybe we might do that in the future. Still some of Kurt's ideas. So anyway, one of the things that we're also focusing on is building our relationships with our parents and our community. That was one of my big focuses this year. And so this Saturday, we're having our first family event. And I think this is really an important part of PBIS to get everybody on board. And so this Saturday, we're having a movie night on our football field. And so we're having, pretty much the whole community is invited, because we have shared that on our social media, and a lot of people have reshared that, which we're glad about that. So that's going to be a really fun night. Kids can wear their costumes. We're going to have a costume contest and concessions and things like that. So we're pretty excited about that as well. Some of the things we are also doing is we have built in a pretty strong character education program that we do every Friday. We have a characteristic for each month, and then we also recognize students as our students of the month based on that characteristic. In turn, we're also asking students to nominate teachers for those types of things, so that we're also recognizing teacher behaviors from the student's perspective. Another thing that we are doing are also rewards for behavior at the semester, and then also school-wide rewards for grades and honor roll and things like that. And just lastly, teaching our kids to be a part of our community, and we've created lots of clubs this year, which is also important, and about being role models. I think that's a really important part of PBIS. We don't want our kids just to be our community to come into our school, but we want our kids to be out in our community, and so we formed some partnerships with our veterans home there in Barbersville. We've been going over to the elementary school and doing some things, and we've also formed a partnership with Marshall's basketball team that we're super excited about. So those are just some of the things that are happening at Barbersville. I invite you to stop by anytime, and we're super excited about what's yet to come. So thank you. Any questions?
What's the movie?
The movie is Hocus Pocus.
Oh boy, that sounds fun.
And you can wear your costume.
This is true. This is true.
Yeah.
I could wear my costume.
I already got mine. I'm super excited about it. So, any questions?
No, it sounds great.
Yeah. All right.
Very good report.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you all. And I've got 2 other schools that are implementing this as well, but I thought this would be a good to see one that's been doing it for several years, and then one that's kind of just starting this out. But if you've seen any social media of any of these schools, they do a very, very good job of, we saw some things about Spirit Week at Milton Middle. I think I sent some things to cabinet members and different things that was going on, these schools are really making it fun, and I appreciate that.
Who won the game, by the way? Who won the football game? Ah.
Oh, no.
I was just curious because what I did see was all of the activities going on at Milton, and I was like, if anybody had the points for riling them up, it would have been Milton probably. I know we're on. The people can hear us, but I was going to say that we even got community complaints. They're having too much fun over at that middle school, you know.
No, and I will tell you, they make a great team. I know
do.
Mr. Mann had a cookout for his staff, and he invited the administrators from Barbersville Middle to come over to that. And I think Carrie was able to stop over at the cookout. Did you eat anything? I don't know if I trust that from them, but. Okay, all right. So they make a great team, and they work very, very well together, and that is great considering they will be Cabell Midland students after they leave those middle schools. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Okay. Any delegations?
There are no delegations.
Any comments from the board? Any comments?
Madam President, I did want to make just one little statement, if that would be okay. I wanted to let the board know that we have been monitoring the color code system, the DHHR map. As you all are aware, that the policy on face masks is that after 5 consecutive days of being any color other than orange or red, then we would lift the mask requirement in our schools. One of the interesting things about the DHHR map is that, you know, its colors change. So, for example, last week we were monitoring it. Well, it was orange most of last week. But over the weekend, when you look at it, it's when they scrub the numbers. They actually go back and they fix the days. And so we actually had last week there were 3 days in gold and 2 days in green. And so we saw that last night, but we could also see that the gold was upticking again. And so we purposefully held off on making any kind of decision to lift the requirement. And I'm glad we did, because this morning we went back to orange. So I wanted to advise you, we put out a press release this afternoon that just clarified that we've been monitoring those cases, and we've been monitoring the color code. We actually had a conversation with Dr. Kilkenny today. And so the delay was to ensure that as we hit the week that we weren't in an uptick where we would be in orange all of a sudden after lifting it for a day and causing confusion. But we're going to continue to monitor that, and I'll try to keep the board apprised of any changes that we do see that, you know, as it may be that we would be lifting our mask requirement based upon the policy that was voted on. But we did send out clarifying information in a statement today that said we're going to continue to wear masks because of the fact that we went back to orange again today on the DHHR map.
Very good. Okay, anything else? Okay, I need a motion to adjourn. Mr. Parsons, please.
I second the motion.
Mr. Shaw, second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, there she is. Hope you're feeling